wait to interview her. But let's just start off with what this show is. I've set it up really because I think that we need to make women far more visible. And so I like to shine the light on female founders and women doing extraordinary things in business. And let me tell you, Hannah Moreno absolutely fits the bill. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me, Jules. I'm excited to get started.
It's my absolute pleasure. Okay, well, why don't we start off with what is the name of your business?
So my business is called Third Hemisphere. We're an APAC-based climate, tech and finance, PR and investment agency. I know that's a bit of a mouthful.
Right.
We added APAC recently, so I've had to add that to the descriptor. We added investment to PR agencies, so now I have to add investment to the descriptor.
Did you start off in PR though? Was it a PR agency that has then grown into this specialty area?
Yeah, I think we kind of probably called ourselves a fintech PR agency.
Okay.
We first started.
That's very cool.
9 years ago now. So we're sort of thinking about the venue for our 10th birthday.
Exciting.
Yeah. And so we only recently changed from sort of fintech. Well, the transition from fintech to broader technology happened probably about 5 years ago. And then more recently, we decided to focus a little bit more on climate and sustainability as a really important industry for multiple reasons.
Wow. Yes. Well, if anyone is reading this description, they'll see that I really contacted you to do this on the back of your one around woke brands. So let's talk about that in a second. But firstly, why did you set up the agency? So is there what was the purpose of it? And is there a little story behind it? Did you have a little light bulb moment at all?
Well, it's a funny one you say. So the origin story of Third Hemisphere to me is sort of a lesson in why you should argue on the internet.
Great.
That's what I believe. So I am a fervent advocate for gender equality, and more broadly now I've expanded that absolutely to just be inclusivity, diversity, equity, and inclusivity more broadly. Intersectional gender equality is important because, otherwise we're just leaving out big, large groups of women. And so I've been very vocal on Facebook in general. And as a result of that, I had a business owner, an SMSF auditing business owner, read my Facebook arguments, and she actually thought I might hire that person as a content writer for my business.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, she must have liked the way that I...
Yes, no doubt. I do too.
My arguments. But I saw that as a bit of an opportunity. I thought that's an interesting way to be hired.
And were you employed at that stage?
I was employed. So I was in my first year of working for a different PR agency, specialized a bit more in property.
Okay.
It was a very small agency. It was a bit of a chaotic work environment, to use a nice word.
Be nice.
And so I did a very small project for her. And at the end, she said, I'd like to invest in you starting a PR agency.
Oh my God, isn't that like the dream of a whole lot of women? That is just fantastic.
Yeah, it was crazy because, I'd started in PR, I'd enjoyed it. I've always really enjoyed writing. For whatever reason, I've enjoyed applying that in a commercial sense. I'm not sort of like a screenwriter or, I'm not doing that creative side of it, although PR does involve a lot of creativity. But I just like to help companies achieve their commercial goals via communication. But as I mentioned, the company was a bit chaotic. I also had in the back of my mind, as a woman, I don't place the same playing field as men do. For instance, when I wanted to have a family, I wanted to take a bit of control into my own hands. And so I thought if I ran an agency, that might give me a bit more control.
I love that. Do you know, I started a PR. I taught myself how to do PR and started an agency when my first child was born, and have only recently left my PR SaaS platform. So I get it, and I love all of that stuff. Okay, so let's talk about let's do a little bit of a side talk now about woke brands. So your post, which I loved, because we all hear about, they change the name of Prune Cheese to Cheers or whatever it is, and suddenly all the sales disappear. And I've heard this multiple times, and you did this post that went, yes, but if you look a year later, Have you got a whole lot of workmen in the background or something? I can
Yeah,
hear.
I do. I'm so sorry that that's come through.
No, that's absolutely fine. I just thought I'd mention it in case people think we've got something wrong with our tech.
Yeah, no, that's my building.
So you did this post. You said it's all well and good to measure it a week later, but what about a year later? And a year later, those brands had kind of not only got back to where they were, but really exploded. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I loved that someone was talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that post that you would have seen on LinkedIn, that was a summation of a presentation that I did at Mumbrella ComsCon, which is the public
That's right.
relations and communications industry's
Yep.
like premier annual event. And basically, the idea that brands, should do brands go woke? Do woke, do
Do
brands
woke
go
brands
woke if
survive?
they go woke?
Yeah.
I really looked into that, and the whole concept behind it is this idea called new power, which is a
Mhm.
term that was coined by Jeremy Hymans, I believe his name is, who was the founder of GetUp.
Right.
And he talks about how now with the internet, we're no longer seeing this kind of power that's like top down, a CEO dictates a thing down here and you can just tell people what to do. It's more, we have this whole idea of social sharing, where if a brand does something I don't like, and I'm not the CEO, I can tell someone on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, Twitter,
Yeah.
whatever it's called now, and someone else that might really resonate with someone else. And they might be like, yeah, you know what, that's bullshit. And they share it and they might have a bit of influence and suddenly it's going, and it's going viral. And all of a sudden these brands are being held to account by just people. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of power in that. And the obvious example of this is Me Too, the Me Too
Yeah.
movement,
Yeah.
which had a few sort of different origin areas, but it then became quite well known when I think it was, I can't remember her name, it was a celebrity who kind of did it, and then it kind of went everywhere. And hundreds of men lost their jobs, hundreds of men got arrested. Like it was really, really powerful. But thousands and millions of men were also made aware of what women go through on a daily basis. Women didn't need to be made aware, we all knew.
I thought that was the really powerful bit when it came down from the celebrity level and came down to, have normal women had this experience, and I would say every single woman in the world has.
Yeah.
That was shocking to the men, especially the great men out there that are doing the right thing and feel like it's just little pockets that it's happening in.
Yeah. No, it's every woman. Like maybe it's not all men. I have a theory on that. It might be a bit intense at the start of this.
Ooh, that sounds like a good conversation.
Now I put my foot into it. It's definitely, yes, all women. 100%
Yeah.
of women.
Yeah.
100% of women have
Absolutely.
experienced it. So maybe it's just one man out there getting, doing the rounds, but that's still too many. And
Yeah.
that we still need to, not be discounting women's experiences. So that's a good example of it. That trended in 95 countries, multiple languages. It was a massive,
And there's now broad awareness of it still. I mean, it's still being thrown in, and there are still guys being held accountable for their shit behavior.
Absolutely, there are, and
years
that's
later.
increasing. That's going to increase. So that's an example of new power. But so is get woke, go broke. So
Yeah.
very same form of power that
Right.
works for the woke works for the anti-woke. So
Yeah.
in the exact same way, Kellogg's can put out, a cereal that I can't remember what they did. They did something woke, and people were like, "How dare you!" And then they used social media platforms to amplify their outrage. Like, time to boycott Kellogg's or Keurig or
Yeah.
whoever we're boycotting this week. And then because the market capitalization of these companies is often in the billions,
Yeah.
5% drop, a temporary drop
Huge
creates
numbers.
$1 billion drop
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
market cap. And then you see, because the news media, which I work with very regularly, it thrives on those kind of clickbaity headlines,
Absolutely.
regardless of how sensible the news story itself might be. Billions lost to wokeness, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They're very catchy, very exciting headlines. But then the data shows they recover a week later. But they only recover, according to the data, if their attempts at wokeism are actually genuine.
Right.
So they can't just be like, BHP polluting forever, and then is like, yeah, I'm supporting World Earth Day.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And people are like, well, good. You're like, people are gonna be like, no,
but that's not going to make me buy more of your stuff.
Yeah, and that was just a theoretical example, but a real example actually was the Pepsi Max ad. which depicted, it was just during the Black Lives Matter movement. It depicted Kendall Jenner, supermodel, at a rally, effortlessly neutralizing police brutality with a can of Pepsi.
Oh my God.
It
I
took
missed
one
that
day.
one. Right.
Oh, you missed that. I'll send it through to you following
Yeah,
this.
do.
It took one day for the advertising company that would have been paid lots and lots of money to produce that with Kendall Jenner. She's not, cheap. One day to take it down, because not only did the anti-woke absolutely hate it, but so did the pro-woke, because it was a load of bullshit, quite frankly. Yeah. Martin Luther King's daughter tweeted, "If only Daddy had known about Pepsi."
I shouldn't laugh, but yeah. But it's that sort of facile and ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah, so it was obvious that Pepsi, not only did it have nothing to do with anything that they did, they obviously hadn't consulted with the very groups that they were seeking to empower. I would say that they weren't seeking to empower them. I would say they were seeking to leverage a social phenomenon that
they were probably hoping for the outrage, because that would give them much better results than if they'd done a boring Pepsi normal ad.
I hope that's what they were hoping. I hope they had strategic, because it didn't seem like anything was strategic from where I was sitting.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah, the pro-woke and the anti-woke hated it, and they didn't. It took them a very, very long time to recover, because no one believed it. So you've got to be genuine.
Yeah, but if you are genuine, and I always think that Coon cheese is a really good example, because a lot of people go, but it was named after the person who created it, which is fine, but that doesn't make it not offensive to all of the Black people in the world who are, we're trying to phase out this word. And then there was lots and lots of, media hoo-ha about no one will buy it anymore because people won't recognize it. And that was just all rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy to not be offensive, hey? Like, it's really easy to not center your feelings about a brand of cheese over, the oppression of a group. Actually, another example of needing to be genuine and really sticking to what you've said is, what was her name? Dylan Mulvaney. Two different brands. So Dylan Mulvaney is a trans woman.
Who's the who has been over the Bonds? Wasn't she in Bonds underwear or something?
There were two different brands, and I should remember this because
one of them was a beer brand or a drink
Bud
brand.
Bud Light was the one who did it poorly.
Yeah.
And I think it was Nike who did it well.
Right.
So Bud Light used, in some form of influencer deal, I don't know the details, Dylan Mulvaney to promote Bud Light. Absolute outrage. What did the CEO do when there was outrage?
Yeah. Well, which is so typical of so many companies who think by avoiding it, we're going to stop it. And oh my God.
It's like you let the information back. We talk about in crises, there's an information vacuum. Someone's going to fill it. It should be you. Right. If it's not you, the angry people are. And so the CEO hid for a week. I'm so sorry for this renovation.
That's all right.
It's been on and off for 20 weeks. It's really hard to plan around 20 weeks.
Luckily, what you're saying is so interesting. I'm hardly noticing it. Go on.
Oh, good. So the CEO hid for a week or two, a long time. And then when he came back, he was like, "Oh, we support Dylan, but we also support people who don't support Dylan. So we just support everyone." And so it was just some
dithering. So there was no positioning behind it. There was no nothing. It was just all.
Absolutely nothing.
Nike made a mistake. What are we going to do?
Yeah, well, they didn't. And so they just looked non-committal. They looked uncertain. They looked like they didn't know what they were talking about, because they didn't. Nike, on the other hand, used Dylan, I think it was to promote bras. So they were even going that little step further. They were like, this is a woman, guys. And let's be very clear on that. And then people were outraged, and the CEO, a day later, was like, "Cool, Dylan's a woman. You can all." And not in those words. I'm sure the Nike PR company is a little bit more refined than that. But they stood by it, and they committed to it, and they recovered in 2 days.
Yeah.
It was totally fine, because they meant it. If you're going to come out there and say crap and then not stand by it, you don't mean it. And no one likes that. The pro-woke and the anti-woke will think you're just not genuine.
And then on top of that, having worked in PR as you do, we also know that the media loves something that's going to be a bit controversial. So they are going to amplify it. And if you don't talk about your position, then it could go in whatever direction. So, all right. Let's talk a little bit more about Third Hemisphere, because I want to hear more about what you're doing. So how does your business help people? As in, who are you kind of targeting and why?
Okay, great question. So on a professional level, I love to give a voice to the sort of marginalized group. On a personal level, sorry.
Oh my God, I love you so much. Go on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I feel like this podcast is going well.
Yes.
Live stream. So that's my personal passion. That passion translates in a professional level to give a voice to science-based innovators, engineers, leaders who are literally building world-changing products, offerings, and who can't speak human. They need help.
God love them.
These people are the smartest people you'll ever meet. So a key example of this is Cicada Innovations. They're Australia's pioneer deep technology incubator.
Wow.
Let me take a step back. Deep technology as compared to digital technology. Science-based, IP intensive. So they've all got dozens of patents.
Right.
Med tech, biotech, space tech, nuclear fusion, sustainability. They are saving the world in all these different directions.
Yeah.
The people who are doing that are not great communicators all the time. Sometimes you find a scientist who can explain things in layman's terms. Like, where did you come from?
And they end up like Carl Kruszelnicki with a career over 40 years because they just know how to talk about stuff.
There's like 2 or 3 of them in the world, and they're all celebrities.
Yes.
Everyone else is someone I work with. So, and to be fair, they don't need to hone that skill because they should be stay in the lab, dude. Just stay in that. Keep doing what you're doing. The world needs you to do it. So my skill is basically, in a sense, science communications. I help to take these people, their absolute brilliance, and I transform it into a consumable idea that creates urgency and promotes and prompts action from the stakeholders that will enable their commercial success, because we need them to succeed commercially.
We do.
So in doing this, and then what that means is that we can take their brilliant work from the lab, from the research institution, from wherever they're building their science, and transform it, or transport it, into the homes and into the industries where it can literally help millions of people.
Amazing. So are you working mainly with academics?
A lot of, so in Cicada, I think it's something like 75% of the people in their roof, and there's like 45 startups there. 75% of them are PhDs.
Right.
And the rest are probably
because a lot of because they're also, I mean, I remember not working, but talking with Melbourne Uni and La Trobe Uni a few pre-COVID, because I had a platform that could help people get their message out. And what I was saying to them is, but they don't know how. So I was trying to teach them, but they're all told that they've got to publish, and they publish in these dusty, dry old books that no one's going to ever read. And yet, as you say, what they're doing is life-changing, world-changing in a lot of instances.
Yeah, and they need to be in front of investors.
Yeah.
And they need to be convincing government where to put funding and how to do that. But I found a little formula that works really well. I came up with it when I did media training for Tech 23 for Cicada Innovations. Okay. Tech 23 is Australia's largest deep tech annual conference.
Wow. There's a whole world going on I didn't even know about.
Yeah, it's hard because unless you're in that world, it's, but you know what, you're benefiting from the things that they're producing.
I'm sure I am.
Ultrasound that was done in Australia. Wi-Fi was invented by some of the guys in Cicada. So
yeah, it's extraordinary when every once in a while on LinkedIn someone will go, here are a whole lot of inventions by women sometimes, and I just go, oh my God. Wow. Or by scientists from Australia, and you go, I'm the black box, and I think freezers or something are made from Australia, there's just really amazing things.
And you don't know until some PR person's like, hey, let's make this something that actually the person on the street can understand and relate to and go, wow, that's cool. So what I found for these guys, for what they're doing, a simple formula that we use is the problem, solution, and impact statement. So if I ask any of these guys, what problem are you solving? Their response is like, oh, we're creating a polymer that, this treatment for cancer. I'm like, oh.
And we haven't had 817 before. And people are going, what are you talking about?
Well, you're like, well, why is creating a treatment for cancer a problem? Because they always start with their solution.
Right.
You're like, no one cares about your solution until they can be brought into the problem.
Yeah,
so take a step back. So problem, what's the problem? There are X million children in Australia who are diagnosed with cancer every year. But Also before we go, but so X million children, this costs the health system $Y million every year.
Yeah.
It
Or
contributes
billions, let's say.
billions. I'm very much underestimating. This hurts national GDP by X billion, Z billion dollars. But current treatments lack A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, wow, what do we do about that? That's a problem. I care about that. The journalists about that. What's your solution? And I let them use their technical language because they really want to, and it does make them very, very smart. But then I need a comma. So we've developed a treatment for neuroblastoma in a pediatric population, comma, that is cancer in children.
Yeah, nice.
You say the big words, use the big words because you need to. And
there's a rigor around it for people in that science community as well, and they feel reluctant to dumb things down, which I always kind of say to people, that's a terrible way of putting it, because you're not dumbing it down. You're just trying to make it palatable and understandable by those of us that haven't got, huge scientific backgrounds. But wow, what an amazing business. That is such a clever idea.
Well, we've still got one more section. Yeah, the dumb it down thing, I actually need to find a better way to say it because I have used the word dumb it down in media training.
I always used to say to people that journalists are told to write as if they're explaining something to a 9-year-old.
Yes.
And then the academics and the people who are very much at the forefront of polysyllabic kind of language kind of go, oh my God, I don't even know how to say it. And it feels like I'm being rude by assuming that you're too stupid, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So we have to, it takes a lot of sort of coaching to get that. But that once you get that, great. This next step's even harder for a scientist. Impact. If every single one of your target market had your technology tomorrow, then
what would happen?
Exactly. And this is where, so the problem statement uses pre-existing data. So that they're kind of comfortable with that, and they probably have it because they probably need to know that in order to put together their pitch decks and tell people what their addressable market is. The solution, they're very comfortable with that. It's just the layman's terms bit that's a bit challenging. I say, look, it's just if 100%, you got 100% adoption tomorrow, then X number of children would be saved from cancer. The rates of cancer.
You can't say that. You can't say that. That's too big. We'd never get 100%. You're going, just calm down.
That's okay. If in Australia, I then make them expand it a bit further. But cancer isn't, siloed to Australia. It's a global problem. This year we're in Australia. We plan to take our technology globally in 5 years' time. At that point, we'd be addressing the Y billion children globally, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then I allow them to bring it back. And this also creates credibility with the journalists as well. So we've created these big numbers, and they're all completely credible because they're only imaginative.
Yeah.
And then we go back and go, but you know what? Realistically, our predictions are that we're going to get 10% adoption in the next 5 years. Realistically, that's what we believe we can do. That's still excellent. Y dollars, Z of GDP. It's still exciting. You've just brought a journalist. Like, I get goosebumps every time I do it, and I'm the one doing it. Yeah.
No, but I mean, because you are doing something that I think is really great. So this is a comment from someone on LinkedIn, but it doesn't tell us through this software who they are. So thank you, whoever it is that's saying that. So now that you've explained what it is that you do and who you're working with, what services do you offer those people?
So at the core of Third Hemisphere is PR. And so what is PR? People, my friends ask me.
Go on, explain it.
So what does that mean?
What do you say? Because I always say what I say to my friends who are in business is very different to what I might say to my mother, where I go, it just means getting yourself on television or radio for free.
Oh, that's so funny. I say get people in the newspaper. But we do it from a really, really strategic base. My background, I am the chief author and editor at Third Hemisphere. I love writing. But it's more about that achieving those commercial objectives. Yeah. My husband and business partner, Jeremy Little, I'm the CEO of Third Hemisphere. He's the managing director.
Okay. I love that. We should have had a whole conversation about running a business with your husband. But anyway, we'll save that for another time.
We don't have that much time, do we? Time flies. Time absolutely flies when you're talking about science comms. No, so he comes from a venture capital background. And so
Right.
and a business building background. So he has some 20
Wow.
years of building, expanding, growing businesses in a variety of industries. And he founded a venture capital firm that's done, I should know the numbers because I've heard him do this skill over and over and over and over. Obviously, I haven't absorbed it.
I'll watch this later and go, for heaven's sake, what have I
I
told
get
you?
your numbers right. Didn't think I'd be talking about him. But he's obsessed. He has assessed over 1,000 startups, as an investor. And so having him and putting his lens on the one thing that we do is so powerful. And so we come at it, we say, what do you actually want to achieve in the next 12 months before we bring on a client? Commercially, where do you want to get? Okay, in order for that to happen, what do the investors need to do? What does government need to do? Which partners do you need to bring? What do you need them to do? Okay, in order to do that, what do they need to think? And then we assess the industry, we assess the media coverage the client has already gotten, if any. We look at how we can set up those media messages. Then what are the milestones that we can use and to insert those media messages in there? So milestones, it might be a capital raise that they're doing. It might be a first in human if they're a science. There's just a whole bunch of big things that we can use as the trigger to make a journalist want to write about us. But then the key is putting in those messages. So you kind of Trojan horse them into the you need the thing for the. So a thing that a lot of our startups struggle with is that they're quite early stage. The AFR loves the idea, right? Like Paul Smith, we're like, that's such a cool innovation. Please tell me how much have they raised? Have they got a big name investor? How much is the product in market? Like he's just asking, like, what can I hang it on? What's going to give me permission to write this story? So we need to find that. And then once they've got one or two hits like that, we can then shift to a thought leadership. We would continue with the milestones, but we can add thought leadership. Because now, like, you can't go right to Paul Smith and say, hey, I've written a cool editorial on behalf of this startup telling the Prime Minister what we should do about nuclear fusion. And he'd be like, cool, Google's the startup.
Who the hell are you?
So you need to get them kind of some credibility to start with, again, for the journalist to give them permission, or the editor in this case, to give them permission to write your thought leadership. And then you can start playing in all sorts of spaces.
Amazing.
So
that's what an extraordinary thing. And then I guess I have to ask the question as well, if Jeremy is part of the business and he's an investor, do you guys cherry pick some of the really good ones and invest in them as well?
Yeah, absolutely we do. We do that from a personal, and that's we are brilliant. So incentivized to do so well. I mean, we do it anyway because my largest incentive is that I need that innovation to be out there. I want to use that. If I go to hospital, I want that available.
We need those children to be saved from cancer or whatever it might be.
Yes, absolutely. And so on the investor side, this is what we've recently added, and this is not something I personally do much with. So I'm sure Jeremy has a better skill.
Jeremy's going, hang on a minute, you've got all these incredible businesses. You're doing all the due diligence.
So sometimes what happens is a client will absolutely love our media, but I'll receive the phone call, I'll be like, Hannah, I'm running out of runway. We're doing capital raising right now. It's going slower than we thought. Something's not resonating. Can we put our retainer on pause? And previously I'd be like, oh, we love you as a client. We don't want to lose you, but we're obviously not going to take money. We need you to survive. But now we can go, you know what, let's pivot. So we've recently done an investor roadshow in Singapore with a company in the fintech space. We also do some fintechs. It's not my personal area of excitement, but Third Hemisphere was founded on fintech. We've got a long pedigree in fintech, so it's definitely something that we're very good at. And so we've done that, an investor roadshow in Singapore. We've got another client who we might be doing that for in Australia and also across Southeast Asia as well. And that obviously also includes investor relations. So there's a lot of communicating with investors. And then we allow that to permeate PR. So we never cut off PR completely. We just shift focus. So when before an investor roadshow, Jeremy and our commercial director, Karen Lawson, she's the former MD of Spotify, of Peloton. She's just got Slingshot CEO. She's similar to Jeremy, just very amazing. Excellent credentials in this area. She and Jeremy will talk through that client's that startup founder's pitch deck and hear what they have to say, critique it, improve it, and I can sit there and listen. And then as they're doing that, I can type down, where are the problems? Where are the opportunities? What do investors mistakenly believe about your industry that we need to correct? And then I can write an editorial and say, pitch it to Stockhead. which is an investor-focused publication, but which also syndicates into the Australian. So then it gets that national coverage. So you're talking to investors from multiple directions. It's all about the commercial success of the company.
Oh my God, Hannah, you really are an incredible woman. I love it that as I was saying to you at the beginning, I hadn't done much research because you've just blown my tiny mind. We clearly need another 2 hours, but we're going to have to wind it up for now. So if somebody has a great fintech, if someone, I don't know, what kind of people would you like to contact you, other than obviously as a speaker, because you'd be brilliant, and what's the best way for them to do that?
If you want me as a speaker, you have to be willing to have swearing. Let me just have lots and lots of swearing.
Brilliant, love you. Great.
So climate tech and finance companies, finance or fintech, that's totally fine. We're here to support your commercial growth via communications, investor relations, and capital raising if needed. You can absolutely reach me on LinkedIn and just send me a message and say, hey, I listened to you chatting away with Jules. This is why I'm adding you. Just because I got a lot of people adding me and I just want to understand.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. Wow, thank you so much for this interview. If I can find another way to interview you, I'm going to have to do it. There's so much that we could talk about. But anyway, I really appreciate it. I hope if you've been watching that your mind has been blown as much as mine has. If you are a female founder or a woman in business who's is sort of semi-established and maybe you're over 45, then I would absolutely encourage you to go to She's the Boss Group, which is she'sthebossgroup.com. We run a lot of in-person and online events, really to just connect women, because we know statistically that if women have a support network of other women, they go a lot further than if they've just got a support, even a mixed support network. Please connect with me on LinkedIn or join the Facebook She's the Boss Group, where we've got a whole lot of very active, chatty women as well. I coach women in how to become a woman of influence, so how to raise your profile. And we also have a new directory at womenspeakers.com.au, where I'm trying to make it an easy place for people to find women speakers, so we stop having these stupid excuses of I couldn't find one when we have all male panels. So, and I particularly love women in STEM, so or women who are marginalized in any way. So please come to us and we'll give you a big warm embrace and make you part of the family. Hannah, thank you so much. I can't wait for people to watch this and hear what you're doing, and keep up the great work, because it's very inspiring.
Thank you so much. It just went by in a second. I had so much fun.